All right, so now we're to Nathan Stanley. Good old Nate Stanley here from Iowa. He's 6'4", 235, very prototypical size, 32-inch arms, 10-inch hands, which is a big deal for quarterbacks. A 4.81 40, 28.5-inch vert, 108.5 inches in the broad jump, 7.26 in the 3-cone, and a 4.48 20-yard shuttle. So just in terms of accuracy, I think sometimes he can struggle to find easier completions and makes a life a little harder on himself than he needs to. More of a general placement passer and the more urgency he's forced to work with, the worse off the mechanics get, the footwork and the placement. It just all kind of goes downhill from there. Ideally, he's just kind of a quick game passer to keep him in rhythm and just out of pressure entirely. His decision making, it isn't gonna kill you, which is good. The bad, sometimes he can get a little too close to the chest, kind of play overly conservative, and that kind of is why you see the lack of turnovers, and that's a direct result of that style of play. But it's kind of a double-edged sword because at the same time you don't really get that same amount of explosive plays. So less interceptions, but also less explosives. In progressions, I think sometimes he seems to kind of see the middle of the field with the most consistencies, but there's not a lot of quick work through the entire field, and too many times he's very content just to check the ball down to his check down, whether that's a running back, tight end, as opposed to maybe sliding or extending the play through the pocket to continue to work through some of those other options, which is kind of, once again adding to his conservative nature. And with his just anticipation, when that ball comes out on time, you might think that you really like the kid, and he's really able to kind of juice up those throws through those windows and zone coverages. And I think just the presence of his mind to handle work within the pocket is less appealing, and he's at times just caught off guard by the penetration and prone to panicking and sliding into pressure as opposed to sliding to avoid the pressure. And I will give him this. If you want to just talk about poise, I guess you would throw this into poise. He rarely ever gives that ball up for grabs, ever. He's willing just to eat the throw or take that sack and kind of live to fight another down, so to speak. And there are some moments when, he's kind of on a heater and he's able to stand tall and push the ball confidently down the field, but those tend to be few and far between, which is unfortunate because he has the talent to do these things. His arm strength, he has a lot of it, and he doesn't really have problems, or I shouldn't think he should have problems at the next level, kind of beating squatting defenders in those shallow zones to kind of hit that space in between them. He has got a live arm, and when he's in rhythm and transition out of those drops and immediately just able to throw into sequence, it's really nice. So I think the arm is really good on him, especially for where we got him. Typically, you don't get that kind of arm talent that late. His pocket awareness is pretty limited, however, and the feel for just working within the pocket also, that feel, it just isn't there. I think he's shown more promise on those rollouts and design plays to get outside the pocket as a means of evading rushers as compared to him getting off script and scrambling and kind of creating a play when it isn't there. He's not that kind of guy, but if he's kind of like the guy we currently have in Kirk Cousins, where it's he's not really gonna make you miss, but if you roll him out, all of a sudden it's okay. I think his mechanics can break down on him if he feels the walls kind of closing in on him and you kind of have that issue. He's a bit, rough around the edges as a thrower, and he will double clutch, and he'll kind of get out of sequence, and then the play is effectively over. He needs to find a way to rebound in those moments and kind of collect himself and get that ball out fast. With the footwork, he comes from a pro-style offense. So he spent a lot of time under center and won't have any issues with the timing associated with taking drops from the line of scrimmage as compared to those like a Jalen Hurts who have, played mostly from the gun the past season. So there is that. We kind of touched on this, I guess, but his ability to run, he doesn't really have a lot of value there. He just doesn't have foot speed or short area quickness or just the feel. So I don't think he really gives much there. And yeah, I think when Minnesota comes into this, I assume a lot of fans will hate this draft pick just because, well, I know a lot of people wanted Jalen Hurts. I don't think they were going to spend that high of a pick on a quarterback. That's why I never really got on to the whole Jalen Hurts idea, especially after they re-signed Kirk Cousins. But I kind of expected this to maybe happen just because Nathan Stanley is kind of like the backup quarterbacks that he always wants. Like, you look at Sean Mannion now, what is he? He's a veteran that doesn't like to take a risk. What was Trevor Siemian? He was a veteran that doesn't like to take a risk. And even when he drafted Teddy Bridgewater is a guy who doesn't really like to take a risk either. He likes quarterbacks that don't take that big risk. Now, I think that annoys a lot of people, but at the same time, I think that really fits well into how Zimmer wants this team playing. He still wants it to be predicated based off of his defense. Whether or not that defense is good enough anymore is remained to be seen. But that's how he wants it to be done. He wants a run game, a defense, and a quarterback that doesn't mess anything up. So I think this pick kind of falls in line with all of that. And I do think, obviously, Stanley has a very questionable ceiling, but I do think he will carve out a very long career as a backup just because there will always be a team that wants that veteran quarterback that will never, ever turn the ball over, and that's what Nathan Stanley is going to likely turn into. I would like to know your guys' comments down below. Like and subscribing, helpful. And until next time, I bid y'all adieu.